like you think so too. So please give a spring welcome to Dr. Robert Buxton.
Good evening. Thank you very much for having me here, and it's always great. I'm Robert Buxton, and good to be back. I think we met a couple months ago, so a lot has happened since then. The weather's changed, and you know. So what I'd like to do first, it's become a bit of a habit, is I like to do a little improvising to start, because in the old days, that's what they did. Liszt, Chopin, they improvised all the time, and then us classical folks now have stopped doing that, and I think it's too bad, because it's interesting and it's fun, and it's also the source of a lot of music, improvisation. So how about this? Maybe we've done it this way before. If you wouldn't mind to help me by giving me notes, random notes. If you don't read music, don't worry about it. A, B, C, D, E, F, G, that's it.
B flat.
Very good. Yeah, you can flat them. Okay, B flat. Couple more.
F sharp.
F sharp. Is up okay?
Yes.
And then you said C?
C.
C. Maybe two more.
D.
Oh, D, just a little D. Yeah, like that. And maybe one last one.
C sharp.
Very unusual. Okay, let me remember that. Ooh, I like it. Maybe it could be French sounding.
Sounds spooky.
Yeah, maybe like the rainy day today. Thank you. Well, you gave me the notes. So now I'm going to play some real music. Well, I don't know, maybe that's not real, but something I prepared for you. Last time I was here, I started with Ave Maria by Franz Schubert, arranged by Liszt for piano, because, well, I don't sing. I'll tell you about that more. But I'm not going to start with that today. I try to bring you as many new things as I can, keep it interesting. Well, there's more than one Ave Maria out there. And my wife, I was telling some folks at dinner that my wife is a pianist also, and she plays for a big church and for a lot of church events, and they had a wedding not so long ago. And they asked her, could you please play Ave Maria for the wedding? She said, wonderful, which one? And they said, look, don't get smart with us. We want Ave Maria, please. She played the Schubert, they were happy with it. But there's more than one, there's more than two Ave Marias out there. And this one has a wonderful story. I'm going to play the Bach-Gounod Ave Maria, arranged for piano, because again, I don't sing, sorry. In the 1850s, early 1850s, Charles Gounod was spending some time with his father-in-law and they were looking at Bach together. Already I love the story because I think if everybody looked at Bach with their in-laws, the world would be a much better place. But here's the C major prelude of Bach that they were looking at from the Well-Tempered Clavier. Probably familiar, this. If you're Glenn Gould, you might play it like this. Depending on your interpretation. So, speaking of improvising, Gounod spontaneously improvised a melody on top of the Bach, which goes like this. Etc., you know. Etc. So the father-in-law was ecstatic. He said, "Son-in-law, this is great. I'm going to write it all down." So he copied it down. Gounod later, edited it, touched it up a bit, published it as a violin piece first, and then he added text. He realized it should be sung, so he added the Latin Hail Mary prayer, Ave Maria, to it. It became Ave Maria. So there are some wonderful recordings, by the way. I'm a big old recording obsessed person. Jascha Heifetz, Misha Elman, these great violinists of the past, they played this, but they would play it, say, first time through on the violin, and then the second time through with a singer or choir as a duet, sort of. So it's giving homage to the fact that this is a violin piece and a vocal piece. So you might be asking, okay, well, you don't play violin or sing, so how are you going to, Georges Bizet, the guy who wrote Carmen, arranged this for solo piano, and that's what I'm going to do. So it actually gets pretty confusing because this is a four-person creation, what I'm going to do. It's Bach, it's Gounod, it's the father-in-law, forgot his name, sorry, and it's Bizet. So I'm going to play all of those. They're that Ave Maria to start. Is that fun here? No. Okay. vocal music a lot because I was having dinner with some lovely people, and one of the people who I was eating with, they're a singer, studied voice, and was talking about it, and how wonderful the voice is, although it's not wonderful if you get a cold, but the voice is the best instrument. And I play, but I do my civic duty and I don't sing. Because maybe I've told you the same story, but I have a friend who sings, and in music school they told me, look, anybody can sing, you just have to trust yourself, all these hippie things. And I said, okay, let's try it. I did the deep breathing and the believing in myself, and I sang a few notes. They said, on second thought, not anybody can sing. So I don't sing. But, the violin, the voice, I love these instruments because I like to pretend to be something I'm not. Who doesn't? That's why I like to play arrangements. I think pretty much everything is an arrangement tonight. Maybe, one thing is not. And that's weird for me lately. But now I'm going to play you a couple of list arrangements. I think I'll do two, I don't know. One I was last minute practicing when everyone was coming in. But I'm going to play you now the Widmung, or Dedication, by Robert Schumann, arranged by Liszt. If I were to sing, the text is by poet Friedrich Ruckert. My pronunciation is not so good in German. Although when I was in Germany and Austria last summer, we visited some friends. I got this nice, what I at first thought was a compliment, but it turned out it was not. People would tell me, your pronunciation is perfect. Everything else is terrible, but your pronunciation in German is so. But I'm not singing it now. This piece is something Schumann wrote as a wedding present for his wife, Clara. And their path to getting married was a rocky one because, Clara herself was a great pianist and composer and child prodigy and everything. Clara's father was Robert Schumann's piano teacher. So he didn't approve of their marriage. First of all, Schumann damaged his hands. I'm not exactly sure why, a few theories, but he couldn't play after a certain point, damaged his hands, and that didn't help, I think, his standing with the father-in-law, future father-in-law. It wasn't as easy as with Gounod, you see, Gounod just like with the in-law situation. But I think the bottom line is with Schumann, and I've played you a lot of Schumann, so you may have heard me tell you about him. Not this piece, though, I've never played it here. Schumann struggled with severe mental illness. It was probably bipolar. They're not completely sure because, medicine and mental health, it was not that advanced really back then, but the 1830s and 40s, but people believe he probably had bipolar, and there is a sort of a misinterpretation, I think, of him. Like the piano teacher, Clara's father, people viewed him as a crazy person, but bipolar is not crazy. Wagner was crazy, that's different. Bipolar is, many people who have bipolar are they're very sensitive, they're very wonderful people, very creative people. As was Schumann. He was a wonderful husband and father when they did get married, and that's pretty rare among classical composers. Oh boy, I tell you. But, so I don't like to call him crazy, he had this condition, and I think that something of it appears in his music. You could say Schumann felt life, the highs and lows, very deeply. Now this piece it's exuberant, it's exhilarating is a better word even. And it's almost manic, but it's a love song. It's like smoke gets in your eyes or something. It's a love song, and it depicts the feeling of being in love, because it has that, when you're talking to someone you're in love with, you may have some adrenaline going through you, you might have butterflies in your stomach. That's how this piece, I think, should be played, like this. The butterflies in the stomach. How your heart might skip a beat when you're talking to someone. And furthermore, I learned this important lesson about Schumann from my very Russian piano teacher. I was telling at dinner, I studied with a Russian piano teacher in Texas, and he went there because he won the Cliburn and was very close with Van Cliburn, who's one of the greatest pianists ever and one of the best Americans ever. Texans too, by the way. Great Texan. And my teacher, I'll tell you about my teachers more tonight because I learned so many things. I remember I played something by Schumann, I forgot what, maybe let's imagine it was this. It wasn't this, but imagine. And I was silly, I played it almost like a lullaby, just very, very calm. I thought, I'll make it sound pretty, and I played. Of course, my teacher, as always, stopped me after 3 seconds. No. You play, it's very pretty, he said, but I feel you're drinking nice cup of coffee, wearing bathrobe, reading newspaper, having pleasant morning. This is not Schumann. Schumann's music on fire. I said, you're right, you're right. And I never changed thinking about that. Because I think that's the thing with Schumann. You can never be too comfortable with his music because he wasn't. He felt everything so deeply. Even the last piece I played, there's I don't want to say it's comfortable, the Gounod, but there's something it's very spiritual and it's very lofty. And this is different. Schumann is different. He's just, every note is just on fire with something. So here is this, again, this is a wedding gift for his wife, Clara. One more thing, this is Liszt's arrangement, and I read a quote I like that said that when you play an arrangement, it oftentimes says perhaps even more about the arranger than the original composer. So Liszt is important here. I'll tell you about Liszt, he was sort of a complex person, you could say. On the one hand, he was a bit of a show-off. He could be like a rock star, but he also could be a very philanthropic, a very caring person, a kind person. He was also deeply Catholic, but he struggled with his faith. Sometimes he was very, being more like a rock star, and then other times he wanted to become a priest in his life. But anyway, the Schumanns and Liszt had an interesting relationship because Robert Schumann and Franz Liszt, they got along. They weren't best friends, but they got along. Now, Clara Schumann absolutely hated Liszt's guts. She said that she would go around saying, he's a spoiled child, I can't stand him, he disgusts me, all this stuff. And Liszt knew about that. And so he also knew that one thing Clara could not stand was over-the-top arrangements of Paganini. So when Liszt was about to publish his over-the-top arrangements of Paganini, what did he put on the title page in big bold letters? Dedicated to Clara Schumann. A practical joke, perhaps. I really think it was just almost a lighthearted kind of thing. They were people, after all. They weren't statues, these composers of the past. So here is the Widmung, or Widmung, I will correct my German later, but Robert Schumann arranged by Liszt. I was debating if I should play this next one. Let's see what happens. This is a terrifying, terrifying piece for several reasons. First of all, because it's brand new for me. I'm just trying to do some last minute learning of it when we were all coming in. But the other reason it's terrifying, well, it's notoriously terrifying. It's technically obnoxious to play. I mean, the techniques-wise, the music-wise, it's incredible music. But it's also a terrifying subject and story. This is the Erlkönig by Franz Schubert, arranged by Liszt again. This is one of Schubert's most famous Lied or songs, Lieder, and it's an early work of Schubert. So we're going back in time a little bit, back to 1815, 16, around that time. Schubert was quite young when he wrote it, but already his style was fully formed at this young age. Some composers are like that, you know. So the story of this piece, again, I'm not singing it, but the text is by Goethe, and there are 4 characters, and a good singer will depict the 4 characters with even a different tone of voice. When Dietrich Fischer-Dieskau sings it, he changes his voice for each character. You have a narrator who tells us what's going on. You have a young boy who's ill, and his father, who tries to reassure him. And then you have this supernatural, maybe ghost or something, that lives in the forest. His name is the Erlkönig. And so again, I told you, it's a very dark story. It takes place in the middle of the night during a thunderstorm. They're on a horse carriage going as fast as possible through the forest. And the wind is, maybe we'll get some of that later. I don't know, we had a couple days ago that weather. And you hear it from the very beginning. You hear the horse hooves, you know, and the wind and the rain and the trees. The picture is terrifying. And so throughout the song, you know, the narrator talks a little bit. The father tries to reassure the son. Well, the son keeps telling his father in German, mein Vater, he says, I hear this Erlkönig, this ghost or whatever, and he's telling me to come to him. And the Erlkönig, of course, represents death. And the son has this higher pitched, almost like a panicky, mein Vater. And the father keeps trying to reassure the left hand there. He's actually saying, my son, calm down. Now, the really perplexing thing is that when the Erlkönig speaks or sings in this case, the music changes. It becomes almost, I don't want to say happy-go-lucky, but it's like the sun comes out and it just becomes bizarre, actually. Well, it's not really, though, if you think about it, certainly. So, by the end of the song, all the chaos kind of dies down. Actually, I was playing it somewhere, and at that point, it's not over, but it dies down, and I finished, and someone shouted, "Bravo!" And it's not over yet, you know. Unfortunately, so at that point, you know, you have, and then it stops. The narrator tells us. He tells us that the boy has died. And so this, you can think about this on many levels. I mean, the symbolism of it. I mean, one thing I think about is just medicine in that time period, and that children would die more often than today. It still happens, but it's a horrible thing. Also Schubert himself, he died at 31, and so he felt this piece very much. He struggled with bad health throughout his life, and so he lived it. He experienced this. And that idea of some supernatural force beckoning you, I mean, he lived it. Another thing is that this period, the early 19th century, was a time of horror and Gothic themes, like when was Frankenstein written by Mary Shelley around this time. the Legend of Sleepy Hollow. You know, this was all the rage. It wasn't Mozart and Haydn and the white powdered wigs anymore. That was out, and horror was in. So yeah, this is Liszt's arrangement for solo piano. He played this a lot at his early concerts, and people described it as a thunderous. I mean, it literally is a thunderous piece. So I'm going to do my best with it because it's still a little bit of a rough draft for me. But I wanted to just share it with you. It's a very famous piece and it's a very powerful work, but it's terrifying. So here it is. I was going to say something else about it, but no, I think that the music speaks for itself. So Earl Kidding by Schubert, arranged by Liszt. Good luck to me, actually. So.
Oh, I know what I was going to say.
One more thing. It's one of the most technically obnoxious pieces to play, and the reason is because you have to do this repeated wrist motion all the time. Maybe I should have had coffee when they offered.
Caffeine would have helped.
just physically, emotionally, everything is so relatively new for me, so it's gonna, need to settle. It's famously hard, so let me drink some water, because it's also a little cardio workout too. So I'm gonna play something that's very different. This is a piece that's melancholy, but it's not nearly as dark or anything as that. I don't think you can be more dark than that. And by the way, imagine, I think I said that already, but imagine hearing that after what you were used to hearing as Mozart, and then you hear that. Oh boy, what a contrast. I don't think Mozart would have liked it, probably. It's just such a different world of expression from what Mozart does. So now I'm going to play a piece by a Mexican composer from the early 20th century, Manuel Ponce. This is his intermezzo number 1, and he had a very interesting story. Like many Latin American and US American composers, he went to study in Europe, in Berlin in his case, and he wanted to be like a European composer. But then when he went back to Mexico to live for the rest of his life, he didn't want to be like a European composer. He wanted to be uniquely Mexican and to use Mexican folk music in his classical writing. And this is a very typical story. Well, I'll explain first, thirds. That's a typical feature in Mexican folk music. And this piece is built of all thirds. It's all just... But the next thing I wanted to mention was this idea of going to Europe, trying to be European, then giving up on that idea. Aaron Copland did the same thing. He was born in Queens, and then he went to study music in Paris with Nadia Boulanger. I mean, you don't get more French than that. But when he came back to the States, it was the 1930s, it was the Great Depression, and he had a change of heart, and he started writing pieces like Billy the Kid, and Rodeo, and Appalachian Spring. You don't get more Americana than that. And it's a similar story with Ponce. And I'll tell you a personal thing. This piece really reminds me of my late teacher, not the Russian teacher I was telling you about, but my teacher before, Solomon Mikovsky. This was originally from Cuba. And this piece, I know this is not a Cuban piece, but it has some similarities to Cuban classical composers, and it reminds me of him. And I'll tell you a story about him and how he did not approve of how I played Cuban composers. So Solomon Mikovsky, I do a very good impersonation of him. He didn't think so, but that's about the only thing that, yes, he was wrong about. He had a very distinct way of talking back in the back of his throat. He always talked like this. Oh, hello. I can't believe how you play this music, so bad, And so I was playing Cuban composers for him, and he never liked it, never good. He said, you're not from Cuba, you don't speak Spanish, you don't know how to play it. So I was determined, and I went and practiced very hard. I listened to recordings of Cuban folk singers, and I tried to emulate what they were doing, and went to the lesson I played for him, and he was silent for a long time, and I thought, that's it, I finally got it. And he mutters to me, why do you even bother? And it gets even better because after that he assigned a different Danza Cubana by Ignacio Cervantes, Cuban composer, a different short piece to every student of his, and gathered us all in the concert hall, just like this, sitting all the students, one by one, everyone got up, played their piece, and he would just tear it apart. And then we had a Cuban exchange student who came to play. And he said, after they were done, he said, oh, it's much better, but still very bad. But he was tongue-in-cheek about it. I mean, I'm telling you, it sounds like he was a little bit tongue-in-cheek about it, and had a great sense of humor too. He was demanding, but very funny, in a funny way. So this piece brings a smile to my face because it reminds me of him. But he wouldn't have approved of how I play it. So. Manuel Ponce, Intermezzo number 1. I heard about Buc-ee's in Mebane. I lived in Mebane, and we were talking with John and several other people about Buc-ee's. Well, if you don't know, I lived in Texas for a while. It's a large gas station that originates from Texas. And maybe this doesn't sound like a compliment, but I've heard it referred to as the Walmart of gas stations. Not that there's anything wrong with it. But so the reason I'm bringing this up, so I live in Mebane, and they keep saying, well, they're going to finish Buc-ee's on so-and-so date, and then the date comes, it's not done. They're going to be done a later date, and they keep pushing back the opening. That's what's happening with me with this piece. So I call this the Buc-ee's piece. I'm going to play you a little bit from the beginning of Rachmaninoff's Rhapsody on the Theme of Paganini. I played you the 18th variation before, I know that, but not anything else. Now, this piece is for piano and orchestra, which is a little bit of a problem because I don't think I can fit a whole orchestra in here. Sorry. So what I've been doing is smushing it all into one piano part, and I'm starting to regret it. I think I told you the same story when last time I played the Lutoslawski Paganini variations, a very atonal piece, and it's the same idea. I try to take the orchestra and piano. It's a little bit crazy, but it's just for logistics. I can't bring an orchestra around everywhere, unfortunately. So this piece is a late work of Rachmaninoff. He was born in Tsarist Russia in 1873. He was mentored by Tchaikovsky. But then the second half of his life, roughly speaking, was he left when the revolution happened in 1917, and he lived in the West. He never came back. Mostly lived in the US, here in the States, and he loved being an American. He was a proud citizen, but he also was terribly homesick. And he suffered from bouts of depression. He probably had clinical depression. There's stories about throughout his life, but particularly when he left Russia. And actually, so when he left Russia, he couldn't write music for about 15 years. He did some editing, he did some arrangements, but he didn't write really any original compositions for a long time. But in the 1930s, his creativity came back. And that's when he wrote this in 1935. But the style is different. I mean, here's something from his early days when he was mentored by Tchaikovsky. I mentioned he'd write phrases that never end, basically. See, it just keeps going and going. It's like a wide open Russian meadow or something, It keeps going. I mean, the phrase does not stop. It just goes and goes. It's like you're reading Tolstoy and the sentence goes for a whole page or two. By the way, he met Tolstoy, speaking of depression. His first symphony had a disastrous performance, and he became very depressed, didn't write for a year. This was back in Russia. Now, it wasn't Rachmaninoff's fault. It was the conductor, Alexander Glazunov's fault. He was drunk at the first performance. So, it didn't go very well, the performance. So during this period, there was a singer, Fyodor Shaliapin, who was Rachmaninoff's friend, and he said, let's go to Tolstoy's dacha, and we'll perform for him. I'll sing, you play the piano, we'll do your music for voice, Rachmaninoff's music. So they went to cheer up Rachmaninoff, and they did a performance, and Tolstoy came to young Rachmaninoff and said, your music is useless. That helped, right? Now, the next part is the best part. He said, your music is as useless as Beethoven's. Which I think, really? So that's a compliment. Tolstoy hated Beethoven too, and Shakespeare. So as much of a genius and amazing, person Tolstoy was, he had a couple odd opinions of things, which I don't think are right. But anyway, this piece comes much later. It's from a different world. He had already been living in the West for a while. And just from the very beginning, it's different. You'll hear what I'll play the beginning. So I tell you what I hear in that already. That's America. That's what happens when you put a 19th century Russian man in the middle of Midtown Manhattan. You get that. And so I think this piece, it's called variations, but I call them more vignettes. They're like vignettes to a rearview mirror. Each one is like a different little piece. and some of them are very nostalgic. But for what I'm going to play, just the first, chunk, 1/3 of it or something, not the whole thing tonight. Maybe next time when it's done, like Bucky's. You're going to hear the Paganini 24th Caprice. I've played you a ton of pieces based on that. Brahms and Lutoslav. This is a different one. This is Rachmaninoff. And it's funny because you hear that theme for a little while and then you don't. Because he doesn't write traditional variations here. He departs from that and does his own thing. So you're going to hear that. You're going to hear this melody as well. Ever heard that before? That's the Dies Irae chant from the Middle Ages. It's pretty creepy. It means day of wrath. And he was probably thinking about his own mortality. He was seeing current events. The Second World War was coming. Stanley Kubrick uses that in The Shining when they're driving to that creepy hotel in the mountains. That's what this piece, that music is just disturbing. So there's that. You're going to hear Russian church bells also. That he was a Russian Orthodox Christian. Although I did read that the church excommunicated him when he married his cousin. But So just to give an idea, those are maybe some of the ingredients for a late Rachmaninoff stew. One more thing, my mother, speaking of stews, my mother's from Russia. I've been telling people this. And she's really from Russia, from Moscow, not Idaho, but Moscow. And just to give you an idea of Russian nostalgia and my mother, because she loves being here, she's never gone back, but she misses the old country sometimes. And on July 4th, we had a heat wave, like 100 degrees and everything. And my mother calls me up and she says, Robert, I cooked Russian borscht for you. You have to come eat. And I said, oh, Mom, what borscht is? A thick, heavy beet and cabbage soup. Stew. And I said, Mom, it's North Carolina. It's 100 degrees out. It's 100% humidity. I know. She says, I don't care. It's just like home. That's Rachmaninoff, too. His house in Beverly Hills, where he chose to live. I don't know why. There's nothing wrong with it. He had it designed as an exact replica of his home in Russia. That's the power of memory and nostalgia. So here's a chunk of the Rachmaninoff Rhapsody on a theme of Paganini. piece, one more, and then a little gospel to close. So if I might go a little over. If you have to leave, I understand. I know. So this is that okay if I go a little? Okay, I try not to go too far.
Yeah.
So last time I was here, will be like the Ave Maria was a sequel to the Schubert I did last time. Last time, I think I did Flight of the Bumblebee. Yes, but I did the Rachmaninoff version of that. And that is pretty straightforward. I'll tell you again, the story is from Rimsky-Korsakov's opera from 1900 called The Tale of the Tsar Sultan. There's a prince who turns into a bumblebee so he can go see the Tsar, who happens to be his father. It's a Russian fairy tale. They don't make any sense. I grew up on them through my mother. They don't make sense. So what's the meaning of the story? There's no meaning. It's just a weird Russian thing. Now Rachmaninoff's arrangement, which I won't play tonight, is pretty straightforward to the original, like he does. Etc. Now, you know how there's sometimes two people who tell the same story and the one person sticks to the facts and then another person tells it and, well, they don't. That's the next version I'm going to play. This is an arrangement by the Hungarian pianist György Cifra. And he was a Hungarian gypsy pianist. In the 1950s, he tried to escape communist Soviet-controlled Hungary, and he was captured. And so he was sentenced to years of hard labor in a prison camp, lifting heavy stones all day. And it damaged the muscles and ligaments in his arms. And you see videos of him playing, he would wear these thick leather bracelets here to support those ligaments. Now here's the thing about Cifra, you would think, because I told you Schumann damaged his hands, you know, he couldn't, it didn't do anything to Cifra. He had a superhuman ability to play. I've given up even trying to remotely sound like him. He was on another planet. He and Art Tatum, just, I don't know what they are as piano, just incredible and superhuman. So, I need the water before this. So this is a crazy arrangement, and what he does is he changes it from the flight of a bumblebee to what sounds like swarms of yellow jackets and hornets. I'll show you what I mean. The whole piece is like that. So this is another one like Erlkönig. It's one of these crazy things. So good luck to all of us. It's not that long though, so you know if it's not your cup of tea or you get scared of being stung, well, you'll be okay. So here it is. That was a dad joke. Okay. forgive the tired old story, but my mother's an immigrant from Russia. My dad, he too is an immigrant from Southern Virginia, and he raised me on gospel, so I'm going to play you a couple gospels, and then at the end I'm going to force you to sing. This is In My Heart, There Rings a Melody. And I can't make up my mind if I want it to go slow or fast, so I'm just going to do many different tempos and just go completely New Orleans at the very end. One more, then we'll do the singing one. This is, although you can sing if you know it, but On the Jericho Road, this is another one of the old gospel songs they don't sing in the churches so much now, and I think that's too bad. So this is my dad's music. He raised me on this stuff, while my mom raised me on classical music and the borscht. So for my dad, it was this music and collard greens, and so yeah. Wasn't planning to do this, but I got a special request. This won't take long. This will be the last thing. Please sing. I don't even have to tell you what this is because you'll know it. I'll give you an intro and then that's it. You're off. Later.